something.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Congressman Veasey, all my incredible colleagues from Texas, and thank you to the Voting Rights Caucus for fighting, as always, to defend the cornerstone of American democracy, the right and power of the people to choose their representative. So here's what's going on. Republicans know they have a losing message, including among their own voters. 2 out of 3 Trump voters oppose the tax cuts they have given the rich. 60% oppose cuts to food assistance. 71% oppose cuts to Medicaid. House Republicans have just spent 6 months doing exactly that. The agenda is not primed to win them many elections, so they are resorting to the oldest trick in the right-wing playbook. Pick your own voters. They do it by suppressing the vote, they do it by driving down turnout, and they do it by chopping up congressional districts. We know that Texas is going to be the first stop, but it is not going to be the last. That's how weak they are. And the American people see this for what it is. Republicans undermining democracy, politicians putting career over country, and Democrats are going to use every tool that we have to make sure that the people of Texas are heard in 2026, that the will of the American people is respected, and that their vote counts. Don't forget, we would be sitting in a Democratic majority if it wasn't for Republican scheming in North Carolina that redistricted off the map 3 Democratic seats. So we're going to fight with everything we have to make sure that it is the voters of this country, the voters of Texas, that get to determine who controls the U.S. Congress. And with that, I am so proud to be in this fight with a true champion for the right to vote and for democracy and for the people of Texas, Congressman Marc Veasey.
Well, Clark, thank you very much, and I want to really, first of all, say thank you to each and every one of you that are out here today, all of my colleagues, Terry Sewell, who is the co-chair of the Voting Rights Caucus, that have taken the time to come out here today to talk about something that is happening in Texas. But as the whip pointed out, we are really concerned that we're going to see this all across the country. And I really cannot overstate the gravity of this moment that we're in. Across the country, Donald Trump is behaving like a dictator and issuing marching orders to his these subservient governors around the country to try and rig the elections before a single vote is cast. And let me be clear, this is an authoritarian move. And when authoritarians know their policies are failing, when they gut health care, they jacked up energy bills, the Trump tariff taxes, the big ugly bill. They know they have to cheat to win. And that is what's happening right now. Worst of all, they're using these catastrophic floods as a political ploy and cover to silence the voices of millions of Texans, mainly Hispanic, Black, and Asian Texans. And today, along with my fellow Texas Democrats, we have introduced an emergency flood relief bill to support the victims as we rebuild following this tragedy. Because what's happening in Texas, again, is only the beginning. Trump is not going to stop in Texas. This is a show that he is going to try to take on the road, and we know that he won't stop here. He said he'd leave Roe v. Wade alone. He lied about that. He said he knew nothing about Project 25. Project 2025, he lied about that. He said he was not going to gut children's health care. Of course, we just saw him recently do that. The Voting Rights Act, continually trying to gut that. They can't win on policy, so now they're trying to redraw the maps. And don't believe them when they say this redistricting is about fairness. Don't trust them when they say race has nothing to do with this. If you give them an inch, they're going to take everything. And so Trump's vision of this country is one where you have to pass a loyalty test just to be able to vote. And so we want to stop this. We're not going to allow Greg Abbott and Donald Trump to drag us backwards. We have made progress in this country when it pertains to voting rights, and now we're starting to see them over the last 10, 20 years. We're starting to see a rollback from the 1960s, and we are absolutely not going to stand here and be silent. We are going to fight against this, and we will do everything that it takes here in Congress, working with our state legislators and in the courts to make sure that everyone has access to the ballot box and that we have fair lines. So with that, I am going to introduce again the co-founder and co-chair of the Voting Rights Caucus, Terry Sewell from the great state of Alabama.
Thank you so much, Marc Veasey, for being a champion for voting rights and also co-chair of the Voting Rights Task Force. As a representative of Alabama's Civil Rights District, the historic cities of Birmingham and Tuscaloosa and my hometown of Selma, Alabama, this is very personal to me. I will not stand by while Trump and Republicans try to silence the voices of millions of Americans. Year after year, our colleague, John Lewis, would remind us that progress is elusive and that every generation must fight and fight to hold on to the progress that we've made and to advance it. It was John on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, his last time, stricken with cancer. He said, his voice was mighty. He said, never give up, never give in, keep the faith, and keep your eyes on the prize. That's exactly what the Texas delegation is doing, and we are all standing behind them to make sure, because what happens in Texas will happen in Alabama, will happen in Georgia. So it's so important that we fight back. I draw inspiration from the foot soldiers in my district who fought, bled, and died for the sacred right to vote in Selma, my hometown. They are a guiding light as we face forces that would attempt to erase our progress, suppress our votes, and erode our freedoms. To be clear, these Republican redistricting scheme is voter suppression. That's right. It is voter suppression, plain and simple. After stripping away health care from millions of Americans, 17 million Americans, to giving tax cuts to the wealthy and the billionaires, Republicans now that they know that they cannot win a fair election. So they are rigging the game and silencing the voices of Americans. Just 2 years ago, the Supreme Court decided in the Milligan case that my home state of Alabama violated the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by using gerrymandered maps to dilute the power of the black voice and vote. Well, what Governor Abbott is doing in Texas is far worse. What we will not stand by and do, nothing in face of this opposition. I can tell you that voter suppression is alive and well. It may not be literacy tests of yore, but what they're doing is voter suppression nonetheless. Modern day voter suppression. We will not take it without fighting back. We will litigate, we will legislate, and we will mobilize. We will mobilize because, in the words of John Lewis, never give up, never give in, keep the faith, and keep your eyes on the prize.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you, Representative Sewell. The next person that you're going to hear from is also co-chair of the Congressional Voting Rights Caucus, and that is Nikema Williams, representing Georgia's 5th Congressional District.
Thank you, Congressman Veasey, for convening us on this very important conversation today. Y'all, I'm Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and I proudly represent Georgia's fighting 5th Congressional District, where we fight for our right to vote. I have the honor of serving in the seat of the late Congressman John Lewis, who served in this body for over 30 years. And as you've heard from our fellow co-chair, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, Congressman Lewis gave a little blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge so I could serve in this body, so that we could have free maps and free and fair elections, so that everyone had a voice and a say in our democracy. Just last week, we had the John Lewis Day of Action to honor Congressman Lewis. And as we think about everything that he fought for and where we are today, Congresswoman Sewell, we might not be counting jelly beans in a jar, but make no mistake, the end results of what Republicans and Donald Trump are trying to do are the same thing: to suppress the right to vote for people in my district, people who look like me, people who have been historically marginalized from the electoral process. That's exactly what they're trying to do. But y'all, Republicans around the country, they're encouraged by the Trump administration. They're so afraid of their own ideas that they feel the need to silence the voices of the people just to win. They're afraid of what the American people would think about their policies, that they're trying to change the rules to their benefit. They're afraid to defend ripping food and medical care out of the hands of our most vulnerable neighbors. Republicans and Donald Trump are also afraid to let people have their voice heard, so they're working in advance to rig the outcome of the elections. But y'all, make no mistake, the Trump administration's policies are hurting people, and they're trying to force redistricting so that we can't hear the resounding voices of the American people rejecting their cruelty that Donald Trump is inflicting on our country. But we also need to be clear about what these redistricting proposals mean. They mean gutting the influence of people who live in cities. They mean gutting and diluting black political power and other groups that have been historically marginalized in our political process. We need to be clear, and we need to make it plain. Republicans fundamentally believe that people who look like me and people who represent districts like mine, they don't deserve an equal right in our electoral process, and their votes don't matter. But let me be clear. I will continue to fight for the votes no matter where the fight comes from, everywhere from the halls of Congress to courtrooms to your local communities, because y'all, it is going to take all of us to push back and stop this. We have to make sure that we are working to build that beloved community that Congressman Lewis taught us about. Congressman Lewis, one of my favorite quotes was, because we know that everything is being thrown at us at one time. He said, let us not get lost in a sea of despair. Let us be optimistic, be hopeful, because our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, or a month. This is the struggle of a lifetime. And so just because we've already fought these battles, y'all, there is more work to be done, and I stand with you to continue to fight until we win justice and free and fair access for everyone. Thank you so much.
Representative Williams, thank you very much. The next person that you're going to hear from, my fellow Texan representing the 29th Congressional District in Houston, Sylvia Garcia.
Thank you, Chairman Veasey, and thank you all for being here today. Republicans are locking the doors and skipping town this afternoon because, as Jack Nicholson said, they just can't handle the truth. And here's the truth. These aren't a few good men. Republicans are covering for predators because that's what the felon in the White House has asked them and ordered them to do. First, he told them to bury the Epstein files. Now he's telling Texas Republicans to redraw congressional maps so he can cling to power. Let me say that again. The felon in the White House is redrawing the maps, not the people of Texas, not the people in Austin at the legislature, but the White House itself, to rig the next election. And you know what we're hearing from Texas Republicans? Well, off the record, they'll all tell you that they really aren't crazy about this whole idea of gerrymandering. But they're just too scared to say no to the felon in the White House. So here's where we are. Being dragged into a fight not to lower costs, to make the cost of living more affordable, not to help the flood victims with emergency alerts to prevent another major flood, but all to do is to inflate the felon in the White House quest for power. He wants to make sure that Democrats don't take the gavel and black his craziness. Let's be clear. These maps aren't being drawn in Austin. They're being drawn in secret in some back room of the White House. And I want to remind my Republican colleagues, redistricting cuts both ways. If you touch my district, if you touch Marc's district, or you touch Lizzie's district, or Julie's district, you're going to have to touch all those around. So it might just put some of your Republicans more at risk. You're playing with fire, and voters will remember who lit the match. And while Republicans run, I'll be there where the people are. There are hearings in Austin. I will be there. There will be a hearing in Houston Saturday. You're damn sure I'm going to be there. And on Monday, I'll be in Arlington for that hearing. But here's the hitch. We're doing hearings without a map to comment on. That's how much of a scam this whole thing is. Because I can tell you, my job is to make sure the voices of my district are heard. But if you're telling me to comment on something and I haven't even seen what you're changing, it makes it really hard. But all that is by design, because they don't care about process. It's all about the power grab. So here's the bottom line. Donald Trump, God willing, will be gone in 2029. But these gerrymandered maps, this cowardice, that'll be the legacy Republicans leave behind. Because in the end, the people will remember Republicans protected predators, but Democrats protected people. For us, it's always about people over politics. With that, I yield to my colleague and friend, Lizzie Fletcher from Houston.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman Garcia. Good afternoon. I'm Lizzie Fletcher, and I am so proud to represent Texas's 7th Congressional District in Houston and to serve as chair of the Texas Democratic Delegation in the 119th Congress, and to serve with these leaders and friends from across Texas and across the country who are standing here today. In particular, I want to thank my friend, fellow Texan and co-chair of the Voting Rights Caucus, Marc Veasey, for his leadership and for introducing recently the Anti-Rigging Act to ban the exact kind of mid-decade redistricting that we're talking about right now. As we've already heard today, in Texas, Governor Abbott and Texas Republicans have surrendered Texas to Donald Trump. They have utterly collapsed to pressure from President Trump, and they have surrendered to political operatives from Washington, D.C., who are directing them to redraw Texas's congressional maps to add 5 new GOP seats. This redistricting effort is an affront to all Texans and to the principle that people deserve a say in their government. Make no mistake, in Texas, Republican partisan gerrymandering is racial gerrymandering, and it is illegal. They use partisanship as a proxy for race, systematically packing and cracking districts and minority communities to diminish and limit the voting power and the strength to as few districts as possible. They've done it over the years, and they're doing it again right now. And this is important to understand. All but one of the 13 congressional districts in Texas that are currently represented by Democrats has a majority-minority population. And all 13 of those districts, minority voters elect their candidate of choice to represent them in Washington. Simply put, you cannot dismantle any of these 13 districts currently represented by Democrats without diluting the voting strength of minority communities. It cannot be done. And it should go without saying, it should not be done. It's against the law. And it's against the fundamental organizing principle of a democratic society, that all citizens, not just the privileged few, but all of us, have the right and the ability to have a say in our democracy. This redistricting effort is not about one district. It's not about one member of Congress. It is an attack on the people that we represent. It is an attack on the voters and the citizens of Texas. And we will not stand by and just let it happen. Together with support from our friends in Congress and many others, we are fighting this redistricting effort, and we will continue to do it in every way we can think of, and some we probably haven't thought of yet. And so I'm so glad to have with us in the fight these incredible Texans that I'm standing here with today, and our friends from across the country who are all working together because we understand the stakes in this effort, and we are not going to let this happen. So with that, I'm glad to turn over the podium and the microphone to my friend and colleague from Dallas, Congresswoman Julie Johnson.
Thank you, Congresswoman Fletcher, for the introduction. I want to thank you for all being here today. Let's be clear about what's happening here. What Republicans are doing in Texas and other states is a 5-alarm fire for our democracy, for our constituents, and for our country. This redistricting scheme is about Republicans clinging to power by cheating voters out of fair representation. Republicans just passed a bill that kicks millions of people off their health care, off of Medicaid, and to fund tax cuts for billionaires. They passed a bill that takes food away from hungry kids and families, and from our veterans and from our seniors. If you ask anyone, this bill is so unpopular. The American people hate it. They don't want it. And in a representative democracy, that should matter to the Republicans that are in power. But they don't care. And it's important that we ask ourselves why. Why don't they care that the American people hate their bill, hate their policies, and hate their initiatives? And that's because even though it's so unpopular, even though they know it will cost them seats in the next election, they have a plan to rig the system, to make sure that their Republicans don't have to face the wrath of their voters at the ballot box. They're more afraid of a tweet of one man than the wrath of their voters at the ballot box. And so what they're going to do, they're going to crack up, split up, and break apart fair congressional districts. It's one of the most shameful abuses of power we've seen in Texas in a generation. And make no mistake, this is a racial gerrymander, plain and simple. To squeeze out 5 more Republican congressional seats, Republicans are leading the way in weakening the voices of Black, Latino, and Asian Texans, minority communities which are already targeted and disenfranchised by one of the most racially gerrymandered congressional maps in the country. This is a direct assault on the voting power of millions of Texans whose voices matter every bit as much as anyone else who serves in this chamber. Our voters, Democrat, Republican, and Independent alike, deserve real representation. They deserve to choose their leaders, not us choosing our voters. They deserve congressional lines that lift up communities, not carve them apart block by block to keep one party in power forever. Redistricting happens every 10 years. You count the people, you draw the lines. That's it. But this scheme throws that bedrock principle out of the window just to protect Republicans at the cost of breaking our democracy. You know, I served 3 terms in the Texas state legislature, including when we redistricted the state based on the last census data just a few years ago. I know that Republicans in the state legislature swore oath under affidavits, in depositions, in courtroom proceedings, during litigation that the drawing of the maps that they produced were race neutral. They were fair, and they were in the best interest of the state. And now they're saying they need to be racially redrawn. So my question is, are they lying then, or are they lying now? Which is it? Texans have a right to know. So here we are today to say that we are going to fight this with everything we have. We're going to fight this through the courts. We're going to fight this in the state legislature. And yes, if Texans go through with this power grab, then every other state with Democratic trifecta should do the same. If this is how Republicans are going to pay ball, then Democrats will be right there. And I promise you this, no matter what the maps look like, we will not back down, we will not be silenced, and we will not stop fighting for a Texas where every single person, no matter their race or their background, has their vote counted and their voice heard. And now I'd like to introduce from South Texas, my friend Representative Vicente Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Let's be clear. This is very simple. Republicans cannot win this midterm election. So they're trying to cheat and rig the system any way they can, including ripping constituents out of the members who they chose, all to give billionaires and multinationals the largest tax break in American history.
That was the purpose. That was what they did. And they know the American people are not going to stand for it and are going to vote against it. So they're trying to rig the system ahead of time, taking Latinos out of districts, ripping African American districts. What they're really after, let's not fool each other, what they're really after is to get to that Supreme Court and challenge the Voting Rights Act. And then it's not just about a few maps in Texas. It's about the entire country and taking the voice of the people and assuring there's not Latinos and African Americans and women and other minorities in this Capitol representing the American people, the people that fit their districts. They're trying to rig the system, and we need to fight. And we're going to fight on the streets with a loud voice, in the courtrooms, in the legislative body, and more than all, at the ballot box next cycle. And we're going to take back the majority, and we're going to fight with everything we have, and we need to alert people. Call your governor, call your senators in Texas. I never thought, as a Texan, I would have a governor who would bow to a New Yorker and sell out his own Texas delegation. Never in the history of Texas have we seen this, and now we're living it. Thank you so much.
Next person that you're going to hear from, also a Texan from Austin, Lloyd Doggett.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your leadership on this. I think that so many people will remember last year during his campaign, President Trump told one group that if they voted for him that time, they wouldn't need to vote again. Well, this is part of that effort to start the next election. It starts in Texas, but he clearly plans to extend it across America and pick up as many seats as he can with crooked lines instead of honest votes. The stakes here are much more important than me or any individual up here. We have the opportunity to serve briefly on behalf of our state, but what is at stake here is the future of American democracy. Because Trump knows if we have a Democratic House, it has subpoena power. It has the opportunity to set the agenda. It has the opportunity to have a big say in the appropriation process, the power of the purse, which these Republicans have increasingly turned over to the White House. So much at stake for the future of our country. Now, when the legislature is considering this, I believe there won't be a Senate map or an Abbott map or a House map. There will only be one map that counts, and that's the one that President Trump drew for the Republican delegation over here at the White House. And so I believe the outcry of every Texan should be, show us the Trump map. Show us the Trump map that Trump says will replace 5 Democrats with 5 willing Republicans. Because that Trump map is what ultimately they will impose. They are hiding it today. They are secreting it. They hope after they go through the charade of these public hearings that they can pop it on the legislature at the last minute, spring it on them, and pass it in a matter of hours to deceive the public. So show us the Trump map. You were so proud of it. You were so sure of it that you could replace 5 Democrats in an honest way. Let's see your handiwork and the damage you propose to do to America to enrich and empower yourself and your family indefinitely. Thank you.
Lloyd,
is Jasmine?
Yeah. Lloyd, thank you very much. And the next person that you're going to hear from is my next door neighbor to the south, representing Texas's 30th Congressional District, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone that is here. It's hot, so I'm going to do my best not to be repetitive, but make sure that I can bring out some additional points. Okay. So I want to point out, because a lot of people don't fully understand what gerrymandering is. I want to give you some numbers, because I want to make sure that we are clear on exactly what they're trying to do. In this last presidential election, Donald Trump won the state of Texas by 56.2 percentage points. But when we look at currently what the congressional maps look like, we have a total of 25 Republicans out of the 38 seats. That represents 65% of the state. Now, what are they proposing to do as it relates to our districts? They want to take it up to 79% of the representation in a state in which a president only earned 56. Was it 56? Yes, approximately 56%. That is what gerrymandering is. It's the same thing we saw in North Carolina that used to have a congressional delegation that was 7-7. Ultimately, Trump won that state almost by about 50%. And we know that statewide, when we looked at those other seats, guess who won? Democrats. It's a 50-50 state. But right now, the congressional delegation in North Carolina, it's 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats. They're talking about they're starting to cheat. They've been cheating. Right now, we should be in power. We should be the ones that are controlling the House. We should be the ones that have the ability to subpoena Elon Musk. We should be the ones that have the ability to subpoena these Epstein files. Let me tell you something. They don't want the truth to come out. They are so far from being interested in transparency. And frankly, we know that the Republicans have abdicated their duties as it relates to those in the House as well as the Senate. And they know we won't back down. So I got news for them. As they sit up here and think that they're about to win, let me tell you, they are playing the game known as the biggest loser. And the biggest one sits in the White House. And baby, the baby loser right here is down there below him. They will lose because the people are speaking out and they are showing up. It is the same reason the Republicans don't want to go into their districts and talk to the people, because they know that their policies are loser policies. They are losers. I'm going to tell you, if it's one group of people that's not going to lose, it is going to be us, because we are going to fight this every step of the way. And so I want to thank those governors that have already made it clear that if you want to fight fire with fire, we got something for you. So thank you to Gavin Newsom, who said, play with Texas if you want to, because we can play with California. I thank you to the governor in New Jersey who said it's not necessarily off the table. I thank you to any Democratic governor who has tried to be fair with the lines that they have drawn. But right now, fairness is not anything that this administration is familiar with. The law isn't anything that this administration is familiar with. The only thing that they know how to do is be crooked, draw crooked lines, and tell crooked lies. So I am here to tell you that if you think that you can just roll over the Democrats, it is a new day. And I am looking forward to making sure that we can respond in kind if they want to play, because we already know that our lines are already jacked up. I already gave you the numbers. You can play with them more if you want to. But just know I'm going to spend every waking day until now, between now and November, to make sure that not only these new seats that you try to draw, if that's what you try to do, that we win those seats, but maybe it's time for us to take some other seats that are sitting up here right now, because they're not doing their jobs anyway. So just know I will not rest, because this is not what democracy looks like, but we're going to show you what it looks like. Thank you.
All right. Desmond, thank you very much, and thank you to each and every one of the members. They did just call votes, so we'll take a couple of questions, and then we have to leave. Please, when you're called upon, let us know who you represent, and please keep your questions brief.
We have Freedom with Gray Television. 2 of your colleagues talked about mid-decade redistricting in California or other places. Do you share support for that? Do you get the sense that Democratic leadership would support that? I mean,
I think, just like Jasmine just said, I'm not a big fan of mid-decade redistricting, but what Trump is doing is unfair and is discriminatory against black and brown and Asian voters in the state of Texas. And so if you have to match Trump's energy, you can't just roll over and be like, you know, you do whatever you want and we're just going to follow the rule of law. You have to match his energy. And so if that's what he's bringing to the table, then that's what we're going to bring to the table.
Lauren Burke, Black Press USA. This question is for Representative Crockett. Can you reveal a little bit about what you're hearing about what the Democrats may do to counter this? You referred to it, and I know you don't know what everybody else is doing, but can you talk a little bit about how the Democratic Party might counter this movement in Texas?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of strategies that can be employed. Obviously, I came from the State House. Julie and I were both there. We ultimately broke quorum over something that was even smaller than this. I mean, obviously, it was a very big deal. And one of the things that I did not iterate in my comments is that we've talked a lot about how, you know, we all know that everything's bigger in Texas. But I want to be clear that this is bigger than Texas. All right. And one of the things that we did not talk about is the fact that whoever is the speaker, which it needs to be Hakeem Jeffries, that is who's going to have to certify the election. Remember, they're talking about a third term. So this is bigger than Texas. This is why I am asking if there are other governors that are willing to do this, because this is about our democracy. This isn't about any singular seat, right here, because we don't own these seats anyway. These seats belong to the people. But when we think about the fact that they are openly saying, oh yeah, there's ways to have a third term, well, let me tell you, they can nominate whoever they want to with the Republican rules, but we're going to follow the Constitution up in here if we are the ones that actually have the gavels. So this is one of the reasons that I am asking for everybody to use whatever tools they have in their toolbox. It was the House that broke quorum when we were in the State House, but obviously the Senate, they could also break quorum. We know that they did that back in 2003 in the state of Texas. We also know that there are donors that I'm sure are going to be willing to make sure that they are investing and making sure that they can take down some of these candidates. Since they don't want to rule out dark money, I'm sure some dark money gonna pour in on the behalf of the American people. So what I am saying is every tactic, as well as making sure we're touching people. I will spend a lot of time in the state of Texas. I've traveled this country, but I am going to be boots on the ground informing Texans, because listen to this. When we had our Senate election against that one senator that I'm not a fan of, Cruz, Beto lost by 3 points. But in that particular election, we only had a 17% voter turnout. We only need to turn out people in Texas. That is why they are so pressed to suppress their votes. So if we turn out, imagine what it looks like if 25% of registered voters turn out. So let me be clear. Just like on his little birthday, he had his bootleg parade that cost the American people close to $50 million for free. More people showed up around this country to protest him. We are going to do the same things. We're going to hit them polls and we're going to hit them hard.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll take one more.
There's some reporting that one of the reasons they're doing this is to actually carve out more Latino votes, because the Latino vote shifted somewhat to the right. Is there any sense that, from your perspective, that that's accurate, that the Latino vote has shifted, and that if they carve out, that would benefit those?
I was gonna let Vicente, because I know that covers his district, but no, I think that's I think that's crazy. I think what they are trying to do is actually suppress black and brown and Asian voices. That's what they've done the last 2 to 3 redistrictings, and that's what they're continuing to try to do now, plain and simple. All that other stuff is just a bunch of nonsense. We have to go because we have to go and vote, but I'm asking everyone from around the state of Texas to go, and I'm going to let Jasmine close us out here, to come to these hearings, show up to these hearings around the state. Houston, there's one in Arlington, Texas, and there's another one, I believe, in Austin. We need for people to show up. We need for activists to be there, Democratic elected officials to be there, and let their displeasure be unknown that we are not going to stand for Donald Trump's discrimination in the redrawing of these maps. Jasmine?
I was just going to add, I had not heard that that is the goal. I will tell you, though, that the state of Texas has always been found to be intentionally racially discriminatory every single time they go through redistricting. So I don't anticipate that we will see anything different. Ever since we've had a Voting Rights Act, federal courts have consistently ruled in that way about Texas. As it relates to a shift, I do know that they believe that there was a shift in this last election. But the reality is that Democrats lost. We stayed at home. That's what truly happened. In addition to that, it is my understanding that the tariffs are hitting our state really hard. Texas is one of the largest trading states in the country. So his tariffs are hitting us a little bit deeper. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to the raids that have taken place, there were those that believe, yes, we need raids, we need to get rid of bad people because that's what he said, but that's not who he's going after. So the Latinos in our state are not very happy with the execution of his immigration policies. So ultimately, do I believe that there is some shift within the Latino community, specifically in Texas, is going to help him out? No. Maybe down in Florida, but that's not who we are as Texans. So I think we are going to stand strong, and we are going to push back, fight back, and we are going to deliver wins that they have never seen. We are going to beat this administration.
Thank you.
Thank you all.